welcome to the Evolving Men Summit. You may not recognize my face, but my name is Oliver Adam, and I'm here today to interview the founder and organizer of the Evolving Men Summit, David Lyon. You may be part of the Facebook group that is quite active as a part of this summit, and if you are not yet, I really encourage you to join. There's a lot of heartfelt discussion and exchange between men like you who are doing work out in the world and want to do that in community. So I hope to see you there. David and I had a few exchanges on that Facebook page, and the idea came to me that while he has spent beautiful effort to interview and center many leading men around the world who are doing the work we want to see, that I thought it would be fascinating also to interview him. And so I've done just a little bit of research on David, and we've had an introductory conversation. And I think some of the things that you might want to know about David is that he's a musician and a writer. He has a SoundCloud page that you can go check out. He also identifies, and I'm reading these because they're specific, as a social entrepreneur, a movement enthusiast, and a coach. And so I think we'll get into some of those phases of his life as well as some of the more relational, familial, personal ones. So David, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Such an honor to be here with you. And even just by the few words that you just shared now, I'm very curious and excited where this will go.
Yes, me too. So I think one of the things is that I anticipate us to be dropping in between different layers of consciousness today, because we're sharing this summit with people, and people want to be engaged, but sometimes they're used to listening on a certain level, but ultimately want to be called into deeper levels. So if you'll dance with me between those levels today, I'll start with a simple question, because many of us who join this summit might not have even taken the time to really figure out what the summit was. We just said evolving men. Oh, okay, I'm curious, click. Oh, I might read that or might not, click. So would you just tell us in some simple terms, what is this summit? And you can say that both on how you've conceptualized it as well as what it's become and what you can see it is now.
Sure. It's always a challenge for me to put clear words onto things like that, because they're first of all very much an embodied experience, and out of that embodied experience arises the action, the impulse to manifest something. So that's the first thing I want to name, that it for me, it doesn't start with a mental idea, but it starts with a feeling. It starts with a certain calling I feel through my body, and as I am present with that, it starts opening up, and I start understanding what the flower is that is coming, that is blossoming. And so for me, the Evolving Men Summit is one of those flowers that blossomed within me. And it came from just my own research and my own questions of what does it mean to be a man? A lot of my own pain around, I don't know how I can express how can be in the world with my sensitivity, and at the same time feel empowered and feel like I can have impact and I can assert myself and I can lead. It felt like this huge gap between, or the huge tension between, taking in a lot of information from the outside and needing more time than other people to process everything that's coming in. And then this other impulse that I, for a long time, kind of repressed, which is, I want to have an impact. I want to express myself. I want to be seen. I want to be celebrated. Like all this, look at me. Look at what I can do. And so, my process in the last few years, it's hard to put kind of a clear date on it, has been around uncovering or unearthing more of these aspects of who I am. And so the kind of receptive, sensitive side is one element, and then this kind of, I want to do stuff and I want to try things out and I want to constantly be on the edge of the known and constantly, you know, look into and maybe step into the unknown. Like that's another side of me. And so I'd say with the summit, this is the culmination of all of who I am or I know to be right now. This is what came through the summit. And so it's different threads coming in. It's the thread of, I want to be in different relationship with other men. I want more heart-centered connection. I want to be able to combine challenging each other and calling each other out on our patterns. And at the same time, have this loving base of, hey, I see you and I appreciate you and I see your uniqueness and you're fucking awesome. And I see so many women in my life who are doing their work, who are really connected to each other, who have a certain confidence in researching what it means to be a woman. And I don't see many men doing that in a way that inspires me. It's still quite underground. And so part of, you know, an aspect of myself that I've discovered in maybe the last year is, if there's something that I see is missing, I have the choice. Do I go into the passive mode of being annoyed with everything that is not according to how I think it should be? Or do I feel called to actually do something about it and say, okay, it's missing, so maybe it's my job to change that? And so I did, to my best efforts. And yeah, I had my own questions that I wanted to ask inspiring men around the world. And so really, every man that is on the summit inspires me. And I wanted to create a platform and open a conversation for men to start asking themselves these questions. And maybe for the first time, and realize, oh, I didn't even know this was an option, to ask myself, what is my expression of being a man? Like, I always know there are these ideas out there of how I'm supposed to be, but if someone actually invites me to look for myself, like, what is my expression? So to create a space, a platform where men can come together and show themselves and research and understand that it will always be a little bit messy. This is always a process in the making. There's no ultimate answer. But it's so much easier when we come together, acknowledging the mystery that life is and the complexity that life sometimes has. And we say, yes, and I want to dive into it, and I want to share and express and listen and be present for each other. Yeah, I'm trembling as I'm saying this.
There's a lot of creation coming through you.
Yeah.
And it's so clear. I went and visited, you'll have to remind me the website, but it was a crowdfunding campaign that helped launch this. And if you haven't seen that, viewer, I encourage you to look at it, just because viewing it from the before stage and the concept stage, and seeing the video and just hearing some of the words that David puts to his vision, it's very coherent. And I think it will inform and ground your experience of the summit so far, and hopefully inspire you to go deeper. Thank you so much for opening up that vision. There were so many things that inspired me in what you said. It's almost as if I would want to follow all of these different traces of thought. So instead, I must come back here, because it would be almost arbitrary to choose one. So yeah, I think it's interesting. So I forgot to introduce myself, and I'm not going to do much of that, but just to say that I'm a practicing astrologer and a performer in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I do use astrology as a way of tracking what's going on in consciousness. And right now, the planet Mercury, which rules our thoughts and processes, it's retrograde, which means basically we're going through a phase of not thinking quite normally, and just having to honor all of the different modalities of thought and awareness that we might be keyed into. And so I'm going to try to stay both focused to unpack your vision, your heart, your life, as well as just to trust my intuition. And the next place my intuition takes me is that one thing I've noticed on a lot of the videos that you'll be sharing on the Facebook page is and it's a very clear embodied practice. One of the things that I think an old masculine tendency can get carried away in is thought. Topic, intellect. But I see you bringing this into the body. And I think everyone will notice it, and not everyone will realize they notice it or know what to think of that. And I want to ask you, where does that come from? And what is that moment for you? What would you say about that?
You know, some people, when they're, especially when I talk to them virtually and I have headphones, they say I sound like Darth Vader. Because I do that quite often. It's kind of deep breathing. I don't even know if there's much I can say about it. Mm-hmm. It is a way for me to remind myself, oh, there's a body. And as you say, like the tendency to go into the mind and to want to do it right and say the right words and right things and anticipate, and by that really losing touch with what is actually here right now, is something that I know so well. And in recent weeks, actually, I've understood better the anxiety that's behind that, because there's a reason we go into our minds, right? It's not just a deliberate choice. It's a pattern. It's a reaction to something that's going on in our bodies. And because sometimes what is going on in our bodies is really uncomfortable, we have the tendency to go into our minds. It's a kind of protection. And that's just not the place I want to live from. It's something I want to be able to track when it happens. Oh, okay. So right now I'm speaking from my head, and my partner is actually, she's amazing in calling me out on it. Or when I speak, I can see in her whether I'm speaking from my head right now or from my body. So yeah, big shout out to Frida for just being a big teacher for me. And yeah, I think it's also acknowledging my human nature and all the history that is part of my human nature. So to acknowledge there's thousands, 100 of thousands of years that are basically part of my brain, and to be able to bring the intelligence of these different brain parts they're not the same age, you know, so they all have their different way of functioning, their different way of communicating within my body. And so to bring all of that more into alignment and into the present moment, the breathing really helps, because this is something that all these brain areas I find kind of respond to. It's like a focusing, centering. Okay, I'm breathing, I'm alive. There's sensation in my body going on. Like right now, there's pulsating, tingling, there's excitement. And so what my anxiety often does is it pulls all the energy up into my head. And so my breathing is like a fully back down into the body, into all the different sensations, into the whole intensity. It's intense.
Yes.
But yeah,
I think that doing that virtually is so important. And I think your listeners can, whether they have a deep practice in that way for themselves or whether it's brand new, feel that reference in their bodies when you breathe. And I think so often when we're staring at a screen, we're not invited into the body. That's our responsibility. And so I even invite everyone who's viewing this to just like, are we listening to this interview for information, or to feel our hearts, or how do we embody within ourselves and listen from a deeper place? So wherever your threshold of experience and curiosity is, I'm in mine, and I know you are in yours, and I invite everyone to just be there with us.
Yeah.
Because it's as if that's the only way that we migrate into the heart-centered and grounded masculinity that we're discussing. And I'm fascinated by that. How did you decide to articulate it as is it heart-centered and grounded masculinity?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I'm laughing because the last interview that I did for the summit was 2 days ago, and it was with Thomas Hübl, who is like he's a mystic, and he's quite the man. Like, he has quite the audience, and you know, some other speakers are actually students of his, and so it was really touching to have him as the last speaker. And it was amazing because in the interview he actually explained the two words. Like, he basically explained why it's awesome to use exactly these two words. And I was listening to him and I was like, I think I just intuitively chose them. Like, there was no big rationale behind it. And that's a lot of who I am, really. Like, there are these creative impulses that are coming up that I can, in retrospect, you know, I can explain the intelligence that lies behind it. But I don't have conscious access to this. I just have access to the impulse that flows out. And so these two words were such an impulse. And I mean, I can reflect on it now and I can say, well, wholehearted for me means I feel my heart, which means I feel what I care about. I am in relationship with the world. I let myself be affected by what is going on. So it's this kind of understanding that I'm embedded into something way bigger. And wholehearted for me also means there's a kind of overflow that happens when I'm grounded within myself, and I'll come to that in a second. Like, the wholehearted aspect is my being, just like it flows out and it shares and it expresses and it inspires others when I feel centered within myself. And that happens through the heart. It's this kind of expanding, warm, radiant energy that comes from my chest area. So that's the wholehearted aspect. And, you know, I haven't heard many men use the word masculinity and wholehearted together. You know, it's something as weird as it is for me, but it's really, it's almost paradoxical. The first time you hear wholehearted and masculinity, it's like, men and wholehearted, really? So I like that. I like that it's this kind of, really? So that's the wholehearted aspect. And the grounded aspect for me is, am I feeling my connection to the ground right now? Am I feeling the gravitational pull? Can I release the habitual tensions that I have in my body and just give it to the ground, give it to Mother Earth, and trust that I am held? And when I do that, I can start feeling myself, like I can start feeling my whole body. And through that, I have an embodied understanding of who I am. And so the grounded aspect is for me a lot about, this is who I am. I feel that. I don't need anyone to approve of who I am, because I simply feel it. And it's very different from rationally looking at my personality and saying, oh, you know, on this spectrum, I'm more of an extrovert. No, it's first of all a feeling that I have in my body that is, and that's something that Thomas Hübl said in the interview, and it resonated so strongly with me. When I have such a clear embodied experience, when I feel the life, the aliveness in my body, some of the questions that I have, they become unimportant, because I realize there's no mental answer that I need. I just need to feel it. And so that's what the grounded aspect for me is about. It's this kind of, whereas the wholehearted is this kind of expansive and up and out, the grounded is more down into myself, feeling my core, feeling my genitals, feeling all of my body, feeling the place where I'm sitting right now, like the one particular place. There's this expansive energy, has this notion of I'm one with everything. Like, you know, yes, I'm sort of limited to this body, but also there's an aspect of me that is just holding it all. But the grounded aspect is holding more of my individual setup. And to combine these two is, it's a huge paradox, because it's acknowledging I'm both unique and by that different from everything else, but I'm also connected and part of something way bigger. And so this is some of what is contained by these two words. And again, I would not have been able to express that at the time where I defined these words or where I started using them. It's something that has grown.
Well, it feels like it's clarified a lot. And it's so interesting because when you call it a paradox, to call back to something else you said, it's only a paradox in the mind, right? Because the lived experience has all of that.
Yes.
So what I think is valuable is naming that and then returning deeper. And, you know, when I think about everyone you're reaching through this summit, I think about who's out there and who's the archetype of the man who most wants to, needs to, is ready to hear this. I think about some of our elders who are tuning in and feel so gratified to see younger generations leading the way and doing new things. And I think about a lot of men on either side of our approximate ages who privately have been wondering so many of the things that are being articulated, but have maybe been even silent about them. And, you know, you mentioned something, which was that your partner keeps you honest, both through how she expresses to you, but also even just what you can see in her mirroring. And I think for men who partner with women, and I do want to address this, there's so many sort of sayings that I grew up hearing that were so hard and confusing for me, like the wife's always right. And just these weird ways that men would try to acknowledge the power of the feminine, maybe thinking it was just the power of women. But I think in our relationships is maybe one of the most important sites of this sort of inquiry and research that you're talking about. I'm partnered with a woman as well. And yes, sometimes to look over at her and see her in her research and in the circles she gathers in. And there is a regressive part of me that feels afraid, like, she's developing so much. What do I have to say for myself? How am I going to be safe if I'm not trying as hard as she is? But then to come back to myself and say, well, I can't do it to survive, to do it just to stay current with her, but to locate in myself that earnest desire to evolve. And I think that comes back to a vulnerability that is practiced both with oneself and so importantly with other men. And so one of the things I'm curious about is that I've learned that you also do some men's work locally. And I'd like to hear a little bit about what that looks like and help other men begin to imagine the type of work and gathering that they can share to lift themselves up and sort of restore themselves to the tribe of the wholehearted masculine. So what does that men's work look like? What does that mean?
It's something that is very much evolving through my own evolution, and it's a lot of trial and error, really. But the intention that I have when, could you tune your audio a bit down? I can hear, or take the headphones, because I
Yes,
can hear a little bit of my voice.
Yes. All right.
Let's see. Yeah, this is good.
Great.
Awesome. So yeah, this is a big research for me. How am I present in a circle of men where I'm facilitating? What is my role really? Am I like everyone else? Like, am I just, sitting in a circle like everyone else? Or is there something that I'm sort of holding for everyone as well? Like, is there something additional that I'm bringing in? And I would say yes, because I'm inviting the men to come together. So there is a certain responsibility that I see within myself to ground myself in what is my intention, what kind of space do I want to open up for others, and how can I be the best example for how I want others to be in that space and to feel in that space. And that's a big challenge, like, because so many fears and insecurities and resistances come up in that process. But my intention is always, I want us in the group to slow down. So I want our nervous systems to kind of attune to each other, to realize, oh, okay, I'm in a space with other people that I might not know very well. So that's, for most of us, first of all, activating. How do I need to behave to be part of this? So to acknowledge this, to take time to connect first to myself. So, okay, yeah, I have my body. There's stuff going on within my body. I can focus on that. Then I can slowly open my awareness and realize, oh, there are other bodies, other living beings in that room. How does it feel to acknowledge that while staying connected to my body? So it's at first mostly a very physical thing. And once I feel I have arrived and others have arrived more in their bodies, and acknowledging, okay, I'm going to be with my experience today. I'm not going to try to read where everyone else is and then try to adapt. I'm going to be with my experience.
Can I ask, like, what a concrete example of how you facilitate that process is?
Yeah. So it's moving through the space, starting to feel my feet on the ground, maybe doing some shaking, seeing if there are any sounds that want to come out, seeing if my body has any impulses to move in any particular way.
Which is already sort of an irregular behavior to share amongst men, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have to immediately do that and be aware of how it feels to be doing that.
Yeah.
Sounds exciting.
And I mean, this is something that, this part of my research, to understand where the men are that are coming in, like the different stages that they are and what it is that they need to be able to arrive. Because it might be different for each of them.
Yes.
But then, so once I have a sense that, the men are realizing, oh, I have a body, I might not have been paying a lot of attention to it, but here I am in a body. Here are my thoughts that are coming up. Here's my reminder to come back into my body. I gather in a circle, sitting, and I share my intention for the evening. I share how I want to be with them in this space. So it's a verbal invitation of, be who you are. You're fully welcome. There's nothing you need to achieve here. There's nothing you need to prove. Your biggest contribution is being fully yourself and sharing all of you feel comfortable and willing to share.
And I would imagine that holds true for whether you're doing group work or personal coaching as well.
Absolutely.
Is Courage of a Lion still an active business of yours?
No, I mean, it was never a business. It was the first creative impulse that came after quitting university a year and a half ago. And it was just a blog where I shared my poetry, actually.
So a poet, does that word identifying as a writer comes from?
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that I'm hearing is this interesting sort of tension between calling out to men around the world and going like, you just need to show up as who you are. There's no need to achieve. And at the same time, you'd expressed earlier your sincere, heartfelt desire to share who you are and be recognized. And the difference between those two things seems to me to be like from going on pressure and expectation to the innocence of expression.
Yes, exactly. That's the paradox. Like once I am able to let go of this notion of this is who I'm supposed to be and this is how I'm supposed to express myself, I can feel more clearly what are my natural impulses. And they might actually be quite close to how I'm supposed to be. Like it's not always like I'm the exact opposite of who I'm supposed to be. But the energy through which this is being expressed is very different. And it's the fulfillment is through the expression and not through the response that the expression gets. I think that's the biggest difference. It's I'm already feeling the completion of my impulse through fully expressing it. And then anything that comes from the outside is beautiful, but it's like the the extra. It's not anymore that this is the main drive for me to express myself. My main drive is to express myself. The expression itself.
So how would a listener begin to practice that shift? And like, where are they coming from? If we're coming from the pressure and expectation and trying to shift to innocence,
right?
What is that practice?
To acknowledge all the pressure, to start sharing it with people. So to have a group of people, or even starting with one person, where you can make these inner dialogues more public. So where we could be sitting together and I could say, okay, I'm sensing there's some tension in my jaw and something in me saying I have to perform really well right now. And I can sense like there's something contracting in my chest and my shoulders are coming a bit forward. So it's like I want to hide a bit. And obviously that takes practice to attune to these different motions that are happening, regardless of whether we're aware of them or not. But to practice what comes up when you are with other people, to have part of your attention within yourself. And you can even start just tracking for yourself what's going on. Like, oh, right now I said this. Actually, I had something else in my mind. Oh, right now I laughed, but I actually didn't feel like laughing. It actually hurt to laugh. So to become more aware of where am I not really fully congruent with who I am, and how do I feel that? It just doesn't feel good.
Yes.
So it creates tension, discomfort in my body, pain, something contracting. Whereas when I express my truth, even though it can be really uncomfortable and scary and all these things, there's an aliveness in it. There's like something coming alive. There's something vibrating within me, or something just, it's like just stuff going on. And it's like the tendencies, it gets bigger.
Yes.
It's expanding.
It sounds like taking loving risks with yourself.
Yes.
And maybe archetypally and certainly in reality for many of us, we come from a lineage of men who were taught to raise their sons a certain way. And so for those who might have histories that don't include growing up with a father, there are ways in which the archetype always expresses. And so I invite everyone to just listen for how that does show up in their life. But I'm curious with you, David, to go to the heart of the matter, like what, you're restoring your ability to just express who you are and to recognize the pain of any place that you had split off from yourself. And as we share with other men, and open ourselves to other men, in a way, we're returning to the site where that initial trauma could have happened, when perhaps we opened ourselves to our father or a father figure. And because they had not learned yet to love that part of themselves, they weren't able to love us. I'm curious about what this work is teaching you about your relationship to your father, or how that's evolved, or just like kind of the innocence of the question. I'm maybe intellectualizing it too much, but just how are you and your dad? What's that like?
I love that simplicity. I felt a lot of tenderness and gratitude as you were speaking for my father, because less than 2 months ago, we went on a weekend together on a sort of experiential workshop. It's called a generational dialogue, where therapists trained in a certain direction of psychotherapy guide generational couples, so either father or mother, and daughter and son, just always one of each, through 3 dialogues together. And the first dialogue is the child sharing, how was it like for me as a child growing up with you? Just expressing whatever is there from a very intuitive place, not intellectually, more of what comes up. The second dialogue is the parent shares, what was it like for me to grow up with my parents? And there you start getting glimpses of the patterns that are repeating themselves. And the third dialogue is, how do I as a child want to continue our relationship in a way that feels nourishing for me? And having that time with my dad and having these conversations was really moving, really healing. I did something that I had on my mind for several months, which was I asked for his blessing for me to go my own way.
There's just chills.
Yeah, because I'm different than my dad. I'm a lot more attuned to my sensitivity than he is and was. And for a long time, that was a huge pain point for me, because I didn't have a male role model in my life that was mirroring masculinity in a way that I could really relate. I would always feel the otherness, like, oh, this is not how I am. There's a man in my life, say my father, and I'm very different. I'm not as intelligent as he seems, and eloquent with everyone who's interacting with, and stable and easy. I'm very different. I feel really overwhelmed in many moments, and I feel scared, and there's so much going on within myself, and I don't know how to express that or how to manage just all the aliveness that is happening within me. So that was for a long time also why I just couldn't relate to men. It felt like there were different species. It's like, who are these heartless creatures that are, rough and smelly and constantly talking in really disconnected ways. Like, who are they? I don't get them. What's going on? And then throughout I'd say my late teens and now the last 4 or 5 years, I started seeing more how I was constantly rejecting them. Like I was constantly disapproving of all the men in my life and just always seeing their flaws. And so I started seeing how I was doing that with myself, how I was not allowing myself certain aspects of myself, like being rough, being like being kind of bold and not caring so much, just doing something and then maybe screwing up, but then cleaning it up afterwards. You know, it's a certain carelessness that obviously can go too far, but that is also really freeing. It's like, yeah, I'm the fucking shit, and I'm allowing myself to be fully present. And yeah, I might screw up sometimes, but I'm awesome. I didn't have that. I was always like this. Trying something out. Oh, that was too much. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to insult you. And so the more I got to reconcile within myself, the more I started seeing the pain I had in relationship to my father of just not feeling seen in many parts of who I am. And then expressing some of that pain and also starting to see his pain, starting to see where, and that's still a big process, where is it my responsibility to ask from him for what I need? And where is he actually not able to give me what I need? And where is it actually more helpful to find other men in my life who can support me? And how can that be really okay? Just, that's the way it is. And how can I find a way to honor everything that my father has given to me, which is a lot? And it's not always easy for me to let that in, but the way that he has my back, the way he stands behind me and says, go your way. And if you need anything, turn around, I'm there. It's so powerful. And I wouldn't be able to do the work that I'm doing without his generosity and his willingness to in this workshop, he said, you know, I'd much prefer to see you fly while I am on the ground than to have you stuck with me on the ground.
I don't know how many sons have heard something like that from their father.
Yeah. And I do want to say, I mean, it's I think these dialogues with our parents are really important. And many of our parents, many of the parents of the people watching might not actually have the capacity to be able to engage in such open dialogues. And so as painful as that is, there are still ways for you to reconcile within yourself with the support of other people, your relationship with them. Like, it's beautiful to have these dialogues with your parents, but you don't depend on them being willing and able to do that in order to do that inner work. Because your parents also live inside of you. Like the way our parents affect who we are, how we think, how we react to others, what our patterns are, it's incredible. It's really frustrating at times as well.
Yes.
Because we want to be everything, but just not like our parents. And so when we start seeing the patterns that we actually inherited from them, it's
how do I distinguish myself if I'm similar?
Yes.
I really appreciate everything you shared. I think it constellates something for everyone who would be listening. And I think it's especially important to acknowledge those whose parents do not have the capacity.
Yes.
Because culturally, it feels as though what we're all doing is like first generation healing. And, you know, for someone like you, who's maybe your father was the first generation to turn around and have the capacity to have these conversations, and you know, the beautiful capacity that opens up for a child when their parent does that. But that's still, for so many of the men who might be listening, perhaps they're the first generation of their family. You know, and that's one of the things that I have such a heart for. And some of my questions I'm asking are about, like, how do we show them that they have all of the love they need, that we all have all of the love we need, in order to just start from right here.
Yeah. And what I would add is, and you know, that's a part that it's not the most fun part to talk about, but it really starts with, or maybe it doesn't start with that, but it includes feeling our pain fully. Because, for example, having parents who do not have that capacity, or who have it to a limited degree, that's painful. And through that pain, we learn what we care about and how life can be lived in the most beautiful, life-generating way. And so the ability to come together as men and witness each other's pain as an expression of life's intelligence. This is life saying, ouch, if life goes like this is how it feels. And we need to learn from that. And we don't learn when we deny the pain, when we say, oh, no, it's not there. Let's have another shot, another whatever. We learn from it when we actually feel it in our bodies. But we don't have to do it alone. Can actually be supported, because it is a lot. It can be a lot. And that, for me, is a big part of the evolution of evolving men. To be willing to face whatever it is that is alive. And ironically, I've noticed it can be really hard, even with really beautiful, expanding, positive feelings, to actually feel them. Because it's so much, it's so alive, that it can be terrifying. It's like, can I allow myself to fully feel the joy that is happening right now? Or do I need to tone it down and like, because, you know, maybe it's not societally acceptable to fully show it, or it's dangerous to feel it even.
In our bodies.
Yeah.
How much sensation joy can bring us, how much sensation loving another man can bring us.
Yes.
You know, starting with ourselves.
And to understand that this is a process. We don't go from, I don't feel my body at all, to I'm feeling ecstasy the moment I wake up till I go to bed. It's, oh, I'm realizing I have a body. Oh, there are all these emotions that I didn't allow myself to feel. Oh, I'm going through that. Oh, there are actually comfortable things coming up. Oh, it's actually getting more.
I'm feeling this incredible expansiveness in the field right now. And I just want everybody to just allow themselves to attune to that. That would be the heart-centered piece of just feeling something beautiful and true that I'm hearing you express, and allowing that to come through and touch me. And there's just this incredible relief, you know, and some tears that come up of just, like, I didn't even realize I was holding in that place. But here's movement again. Over and over as we learn.
Yeah, it doesn't stop.
It's almost unnerving to be quiet and allow that to unfold as much as it wants to. gently, with sort of a playful honoring of the moment and how profound it felt in me. I want to know just a little about where this work goes from here, because gathering locally is important, but this is also a resource that you're building. And I'd really like everyone to hear and understand the opportunity they have through the Evolving Men Summit, especially if they take action to participate moving forward. And so what are some of the opportunities that men have to join this summit and be a part of what it becomes?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that came up while you were still posing the question was, this is not up to me. It's up to us. So that's one big element. Like, and I can see like the way the summit is unfolding and evolving. It's different from a lot of ways how I see, you know, people with a message coming forward. Because in our community, for example, in the Facebook group, I don't see myself as like the teacher. I'm the one who initiated. Yes. There's a role in that, and there's a power in that, and it's good to name that. But even the fact alone that you sent a message to me and said, "Hey, David, you know, I had this impulse to do an interview with you." That for me is an expression of a different kind of collaboration, a different kind of openness that I wish the platform to have, so that these creative impulses that are actually coming through all of us all the time, if we listen, for them to have space. And so that's one thing. I definitely want the Facebook group to remain active and to become even more active. There's something that I had on my mind was to provide something like community calls. So to come together on Zoom and share in a group, maybe then pair down and share something in a more private space, then come back together. Certainly, like, one thing I'd love to do. Also, I do want to share, I think it's a good time for that. So we've been thinking with our team behind the summit around how we can get more people to join this, how we can get more Evolving Men to join. And so what we want to do is we're going to launch the summit, so the 10 days, one more time in the coming week. We don't have the date yet exactly, because quite a lot of people joined in late. And so we want to give them the opportunity to get the whole experience. And there are just more of us out there. And I'm really committed to, you know, I've put basically 1 year of work into this, and I really want this to have a big ripple of impact. And so this is another way for people, if they've joined late, to, you know, engage in the process again, go through the summit, engage in the Facebook group, share what's going on for them, share any kind of impulse that they have, any idea that they have, to come forward and to try it out. And this is not me saying every dream that you have will come true. This is me saying it's worth trying. And the Evolving Men community and everything around this project is about enabling men to step up into their authentic expression. And so the Facebook group, for sure, one thing. Any ideas coming in by email, please do. Any ideas for collaboration, you know, let them come in.
Yeah, and I'd like to pipe up that, you know, you can purchase the package of videos, I've noticed, and get access to extra content. And I think our generation especially is very sensitive to any sort of marketing or sales.
Yeah.
So it would just be like helping people understand the value of participating in building a movement. And that purchasing this is a wonderful way to invest in the work that David's leading and that you can be a part of in whatever way is authentic to you. So I think that's wonderful. It's a wonderful resource. And there's 25 interviews plus this one. Is that right? Or did that increase?
We have, if I'm getting it right, we have 27 plus this one.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate you bringing this up. Also the notion of, yeah, it's like, I know I'm very sensitive to being sold stuff. And I think there's a lot of, things to be processed around that, like the kind of mistrust that we have a lot, and
yes,
for good reason.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I agree. I think, the summit package, the way I see it with any investment is like, one thing is the practical things you'll get out. So you will have access to these interviews and a few really awesome bonus materials. And the other thing is, for me, energetically, it's like a stepping forward. It's a yes, this is something I want to move towards. And I think this is important. It's like saying yes to something within you. And obviously, if you don't have the money at all, you can say yes in different ways. But this is one way to do that. It's like saying, I want more of that. I want this to be a part of my life. And I'm willing to invest money, which in a way is also my time, my energy, into this. It's a powerful way to give something a bigger space in your life. And so, yeah, if you feel moved, I mean, if you feel moved by this interview, if anything of these conversations, they touch you, then I highly encourage you to just in any way you can engage with us, because just in talking with you, there's so much potential here. There are so many opportunities that we can go into. And the more that each of us allows himself, and it's vulnerable, it's scary, but allows himself to step up and to show himself and to put out ideas and to face the danger of, yeah, maybe you will not get exactly what you want. But try it out. It's so worth it. I wouldn't be here if I wouldn't have tried out and failed 19 out of 20 times and gotten up again.
Well, thank you for responding with enthusiasm to my invitation to be interviewed. I just think this is a very beautiful movement, and the reason that I'm stepping up is because I've been doing work mostly on my own, more supported by women than men, and something in my spirit absolutely knows how ready I am and how much it is time to do this work amongst our brothers. And I think it's incredibly empowering to take back and hold what is ours and begin to work with it, and to see the types of unfoldment, revelation, and creative regeneration that can happen. And so, yes, I'm just honored to be here with you today. It's been delightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for following your impulse and reaching out and making this happen. And I'm curious what else will happen.
Me too.